All right, guys. So it is midnight, a little after midnight, and I fell asleep a little early. And I was working on something before I passed out, and figured why not go back and do another list or two, since I had a lot of fun doing those half dozen or so that I did a while back. So doing it started as my top 10 horror movies of the 1970s. Excuse me. And as I went on, I was like, there's no way that I can just do this in 10. Like, at first, when I think of the 70s, I only think of a few movies at first that stick out. And I'm like, all right, these are obvious. And then, like, not sure if I know as many 70s films. And then I start going through them and thinking of them and, like, looking at lists of films from the 70s. And it's like, oh shit, this one. And then just before I knew it, I was like, all right, I'm gonna have to change this to top 20 because there's just too many amazing movies. And there's, like usual, a decent amount of honorable mentions, and some of these could even possibly be on the list. But for some reason, some different reasons for each one, and I'll explain as I go along. But as usual, also, I will put in the description spoiler discussions that I've done for all the films on this list and honorable mentions that I have covered. So I'll put that in there. All right, so first honorable mention is, and I'm kind of cheating here, the same way I cheated for my 80s slasher list, is 1979's Don't Go in the House. Now, I cheated in the 80s list by saying this was a 1980 movie, and I'm cheating on this list by saying it's from 79, because depending on where you look, it says either 79 or 80. So I always throw it in and lump it in with the 80s as like an 80s slasher, even though it's not your traditional slasher. But I always loop it in with that. But I just love the movie so much, I had to loop it in this time too, and throw it out there again as an honorable mention, because you don't hear people talk about this movie much at all. And I'll give short plot synopsises for everything also. That Don't Go in the House from 79 or 80, whichever one you want to say, is about this guy Donnie who is very sheltered by his mother his whole life, and he was abused by her when he was a child, like having his hands burned over a stove by her to burn the impurities out of him, and she ends up passing away, and he goes a little nuts. Great movie. It's has some psycho-ish vibes to it, but it's definitely its own thing. And that's on Tubi. If I know offhand where these are streaming, I'll mention that also. It's on Tubi, but awesome, awesome flick. Definitely check it out if you haven't seen it. So Don't Go in the House. Another honorable mention is Lucio Fulci's The Psychic from 1977. Now, 77, is that right? Yeah, 77. So I love this movie, and it's one I'm covering soon on the channel because one, I love Lucio Fulci. We all know that. And two, it's an underrated Fulci film. It's really not brought up like in best Fulci films when you're talking to people about Fulci's movies. But it's very, very dreamlike for me. Like in which is classic Fulci. All his movies pretty much feel like a dream or a nightmare, depending on what he's doing on screen at the moment. But this one has Jennifer O'Neill, who was just in what friggin' movie did I just do? Scanners. So funny that she's coming up again, and I mentioned in that video that I know her from The Psychic. Um, it's basically about this woman who is a psychic, who has a vision of a room with a body in it in the wall, and she tries to solve the crime. That's all I can basically say without spoilers, but I don't know anywhere this is streaming. Like, this is one Fulci film that oh wait, Tubi. They just added it like recently, like a month or two ago, which was awesome. So yeah, Tubi. It used to be very hard to find streaming, but Tubi came to the rescue as usual. So The Psychic, another Fulci film that possibly could make the list, is Don't Torture a Duckling from 1972. The only reason this isn't on the list is because I still need this movie to click for me. Like, I've seen it, I've given it maybe two chances before, and while enjoyable, like most Fulci, it just hasn't clicked with me, like, to this point yet. And that's usual with, I don't say usual with Fulci, but like with Italian horror and foreign horror, there's definitely some movies I've had to watch a few times. It's like an album. Like if you're listening to like a complex album, like a jazz album or a progressive rock album, it's like takes a few listens of the album before it fully clicks with you. But this one I will be covering on the channel soon, and that's gonna be my like final like try on that movie, and be like, all right, I'm looking at things a lot more analytically now. Let me finally sit down and see if this actually clicks with me. And if it doesn't, for some reason it doesn't. But it's a favorite among Fulci fans. So Don't Torture a Duckling from 1972. 1976, Brian De Palma made Carrie, the adaptation of course, Stephen King. And I don't think many people haven't seen Carrie, but if you haven't, for some reason, um, girl played by Sissy Spacek in the movie has a very religious and controlling, like, zeitgeist of a mother, and she doesn't tell her anything about sex, or like just grows her up very, very, very sheltered. And she gets her first period, and she ends up having telekinetic and psychic abilities, and gets revenge on the people who have made fun of her. So that's all you. People don't even need a synopsis for Carrie. I feel like everybody has either seen, read, or heard of Carrie. But I don't know where it's streaming. I'm sure it's streaming somewhere. But excellent movie. Now this one, I must shamefully admit, just one of those classic movies you always heard of, and that just slipped through the cracks, and I never got to watching. I've seen the original Body Snatchers, but yes, in 1978, the Invasion of the Body Snatchers, I just saw for the first time a month plus ago. Yeah, I don't know how I missed that one either, but excellent. But the only reason it's not on the list is because I need to watch it again before I make any final thoughts and stuff. I'll make a video on it. But yeah, for the first for the first time, but like for the rare time, it was a classic that I have not seen. But definitely an amazing remake and amazing movie in general. All right, another honorable mention, Wes Craven's The Hills Have Eyes from 1977. 77 was a great fucking year for horror, man. Like, I'll point out a few others, but we had The Psychic already from Fulci. We have this one, but there are more, trust me. The Hills Have Eyes by Wes Craven from 77. Now, I more prefer this movie to the remake. I know a lot of people, though, that actually prefer the remake to this film, and I could completely see why. The remake is a fantastic remake. It's a very, very good remake. But I don't know. I feel like they went a little overboard with the mutated people in the remake. I like that they're a little more normal looking in this. I feel like it's more recent what happened to them, like generation wise, and maybe like as more generations went on with their inbreeding and like all the crazy shit they do, then maybe they'd look a lot crazier, like like mutants and stuff from the remake. But I don't know. That's just me. But I just like how he handled the mutants and everything. And the guy, I always forget the fucking guy's name who plays Pluto, and he's in Devil's Rejects. But whatever, he's awesome as always. And just everybody knows Hills Have Eyes. Family gets lost out in the desert, And when their car breaks down and they end up being hunted and tortured by a bunch of people who live in the hills in this desert canyon that was a nuclear testing site. So awesome movie. One more, no, two more. Nosferatu, the Vampire, 1979, the remake of the classic German film from 1922. Um, Everyone should know this movie. Like, not specifically the remake, but I mean like Nosferatu in general, like the story, and not. I mean, most people should. Like, that's essential horror viewing. But just wanted to mention it quick because the remake is actually pretty good. I enjoy it. And one more here, a little lesser known one, but oh, what the hell? I always fuck his first name up. Nobuhiko Obayashi's House from 1979. This is a trippy, crazy Japanese haunted house movie. Like, only plot I'll give is the synopsis that they have on HBO Max is where it's streaming. A schoolgirl spends her summer vacation in a haunted house. Perfect. That's all you need to know going in. Crazy movie, but awesome, awesome movie that isn't talked about as much. I'm gonna be doing a video on it very soon, which is why it's up on my screen. That's 77, which see, another one from 1977. All right, now let's get to the list of the top 20 best 70s horror films for me. Now, this was fucking hard, man. Like, it really was. That's why I said I had to extend it to 20. Now, you're going to hear some classic movies high up in the list. Like, I mean, low in the list, like in the beginning here. And you're going to be like, gee, this is at number 17. Like, all it is like my top 10, I could shuffle around pretty much like the order of most of them. The top three are pretty much cemented for me. But besides that, I can move the rest of them around. Same with like number 10 through 20. It's just that I went by how often I watch the movie, how much I love the movie, obviously, and like which ones that I get the most out of. Like, there's just some classic movies that I recognize are classics. I just prefer other movies or like other movies more than that. So that's you're gonna see some big ones like low on the list here, but doesn't mean at all that I don't think these movies are all pretty much all masterpieces or just absolute classics. All right, number 20 is Dario Argento's, and you're going to see a lot of him, Cat o' Nine Tails from 1971. Absolutely love Cat o' Nine Tails. I don't know what Argento was on the few times that he said that this is his worst movie that he's made. He has made far worse movies, especially from the 90s going forward. But Cat o' Nine Tails, the soundtrack by Ennio Morricone is fantastic in this movie. I love the guitar track and the flute comes over it, like, and keyboards sounds so good. I mean, Ennio Morricone is an absolute legendary composer. But synopsis is there is a blind man named Cookie, and I forget the main guy's name. Shit, whatever. But they end up working together to try to solve a crime that happens at like a science lab, and straight up giallo, same as his debut, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, the year earlier, and Four Flies on Grey Velvet from I think later in the same year, 71 here. But fantastic movie. I know people who don't care for it. I know people who love it. And I absolutely adore that movie. So, Cat o' Nine Tails, I know it's streaming on Tubi. So, definitely check it out there. It's also, I'm pretty sure, on Shudder. So, number 20, Cat o' Nine Tails by Dario Argento. All right, number 19 is The Wicker Man, 1973, directed by Robin Hardy. Now, this is what I'm saying. Like, this movie is a classic, is an excellent film, and it's number 19. It's just I don't watch it as often as the other ones. Like that's pretty much it. Because this is pretty much the most classic like folk horror movie. Like anytime you think of like cult in a just like in an isolated area, you think of The Wicker Man. Just like Midsommar by Ari Aster was such a great movie, but it was a huge homage to the Wicker Man. Like that, this movie, so many other films owe this movie so much for pulling off the stories that they have since this, just because of how influential this film was. And most people have seen The Wicker Man, but the guy goes to an island and to investigate a disappearance of a girl, and ends up being there's something not right with the community on this island. That's all I'll say. But I'm not sure where it's streaming. I'm sure it's streaming somewhere. You might even be able to find it on YouTube. Someone might even have it uploaded. But number 19, The Wicker Man from '73. Number 18 is, and this is going to be very controversial that this is this low again, but Jaws from Steven Spielberg from 1975. I know what you're thinking. It's just one. Jaws has never been a film that I love. It's just not. I'll just put like as point blank as I can be. It's never been a film that I love watching. I recognize it as a classic. I think it's a great movie. I just don't watch it often at all. The last time I saw Jaws, maybe 10 years ago. Maybe 10 years ago. Maybe a little less, 9, 8 years. But it's approaching a decade for sure. So I don't watch this movie often. And I don't know, just shark movies or like things from the sea, like, don't really do it for me a lot of the time. So, yeah, blasphemy, I know. But hey, it's on the fucking list. It's on the top 20 greatest horror films in the 1970s for me. So you got to give it that. I know it's a fucking classic, but there's just 17 others that I think are better for me, and that I watch a lot more often. So number 18, Jaws. Number 17. Feels good to be able to do that again with some of the lists. Black Christmas from 1974, directed by Bob Clark. Now, like again, feels it should be higher up, but it's just not. But absolute slasher classic. Most people, a lot of people, attribute the whole slasher genre to this movie. I mean, we'll get to the movie that was the first slasher for me and for many others, but this was definitely one of the earliest and directly inspired Halloween. John Carpenter was friends with Bob Clark, and just a fantastic movie. Like, this is a movie that everyone watches on Christmas, or for the most part, in the horror community. If you're a horror fan, I'm sure you watch this either in December or right on Christmas. I usually try to watch it on Christmas, but for people who haven't seen it, it's about, and this is Bob Clark, the director, who directed A Christmas Story, which is insane when you think about it. Just that, just dark horror film. And then this just family friendly Christmas film. That's funny. But we have this sorority house on Christmas, and they're receiving phone calls from someone they don't know who is making obscene phone calls to them and starts killing them one by one. And that's basically all you need to know. But man, the atmosphere in this movie is fantastic. Just they played with some hot topics back then. Like there's an abortion subplot in here, and just no motive for the killer, which makes it even scarier, and just an absolute classic. So check it out if you haven't seen it. It's on Tubi, I'm pretty sure. Number 17, Black Christmas. Number 16. Now this is gonna piss some people off too. Is Ridley Scott's Alien from 1979. So absolute masterpiece. We know this. Such a great movie. I don't think anybody needs a plot synopsis for Alien, but here goes if you need it. There's a spaceship in the future. They get a distress call, and they end up having an alien brought on board, and chaos ensues. This is an absolute sci-fi masterpiece. This is like the top tier of sci-fi movies, which I've mentioned before a few times on the channel. I'm not a huge sci-fi guy, and maybe that's why I don't watch this movie that often. But that's all that really is with this movie. That's why it's number 16. It's just I don't watch this that often. I watch the ones that come after this more often. That's it. Like this easily could have been number 11 or number 13 or number higher. It doesn't, like I said, I can shuffle all the first 10 around except the top 3 and all the second 10 around. So, amazing movie. I have no negatives for it at all. Number 15 is Dawn of the Dead by George A. Romero from 1978. Now, I don't know. I was thinking of that this had to make the top 10. But then I started doing my top 10, and I realized that it really does get pushed back a bit by these other movies. And it is my least favorite now in in his original Dead trilogy. Like on my last rewatches, covering them for the channel and doing the videos for them, it got bumped out of second place by Night of the Living Dead. So I mean, Day of the Dead will always be my favorite Romero film, and it's my second favorite zombie film of all time. But Dawn is a little too comedic for me. The bright red Italian blood just feels out of place in an American horror film. I mean, I'm sure it's because Argento and a bunch of other Italians worked on it, the movie also, but I never liked that. And I just love Day of the Dead way more. And Night of the Living Dead just really went up for me on this last rewatch. So it's still an absolute classic, still an amazing zombie film, and still part of an amazing trilogy. So Day of the Dead, Day of the Dead, yeah, God forbid, Dawn of the Dead from 78 at number 15. Number 14 is Tourist Trap, directed by David Schmoller from 1979. I absolutely love and adore this movie. Like, it always pisses me off talking about 80s slashers. And I can't include this movie because it's from 79. Like, and I can't do the whole cheating trick like I do with Don't Go in the House. Because it's not listed anywhere as 80. It's 1979, this movie. And if anyone hasn't seen this movie, I mean, this is a classic at this point. Like, it's become very widely known in the horror community. But we have a group of friends whose car break down and they end up at a tourist trap, like one of the sideshow attractions. Like when you're on major highways going cross country, you can start like, oh, alien over here, or like dead snake woman, and like just little sideshow tourist traps because they fucking trap tourists and rob them of their money because they're jokes. So, and they end up getting stuck in one of these places with Chuck Connors, who plays Mr. Slauson in this. Great Chuck Connors. He's so awesome in this. And this is not your traditional slasher film. I mean, they get picked off, but I mean, it's not really ruining anything because it's even in plot synopsises for it. I mean, the killer is telekinetic, so there's a little supernatural spin on this one. If you are afraid of mannequins, you're gonna be much more afraid of mannequins after this fucking movie. Like, it's filmed so great. Like, it's shot so well. There's some amazing shots in this movie. The use of sound in it is phenomenal. The sound design is so good, and just it's genuinely creepy. Like, it's a bonkers movie, and the score is perfect because it perfectly encapsulates how bonkers this movie is. The opening music is perfect for this. And yeah, Tourist Trap, it is on Tubi for sure. So give it a watch if you haven't seen it, because that is my number 14. Number 13 is Mario Bava's Twitch of the Death Nerve, aka A Bay of Blood from 1971. Now, this is the movie this is the first slasher film for me and many others. Like, this was 3 years before Black Christmas. This was, what, 6 years before Halloween, or 7 years before Halloween, and 9 years before Friday the 13th, which is what this definitely inspired a lot, especially Friday Part 2, because this movie has two kills that Friday Part 2 directly rips out of this movie. Like, one of them exact, like shot for shot almost. But this is a classic by Mario Bava. Like, there is no bad Mario Bava film that I have seen, which I've seen pretty much all of his horror films, just more of his spaghetti westerns and older films that he took over directing for that I haven't seen. But man, he never makes a bad movie. And this movie absolutely shaped and molded what would become the slasher genre and then lead to the slasher boom of the 80s. So we would not have the slasher genre that we know and many classic movies that we love if it wasn't for Mario Bava's Twitch of the Death Nerve, which I always say is one of the best goddamn names for a horror movie. Twitch of the Death Nerve? Come on, man, that's amazing. Like, Bay of Blood is fine, like, and for people who don't know what the story is, even after you watch it once, you're not gonna know what the story is. It's so convoluted, the plot of this movie. But God, the kills are fucking phenomenal. The way it's shot, everything is brilliant in this movie. But the basic plot is a woman, a duchess, who owns a bay, and there's a bunch of people who are trying to compete to get this bay in there and own it for themselves, and they'll do anything to get it. It's basically as vague as you can be, but God, just check it out once if you haven't seen it, just for how important and influential this movie was. But yep, number, what was that, 13? Yeah, unlucky number 13 for Twitch of the Death Nerve, Mario Bava, 71. Number 12 is Dario Argento's Suspiria from 77. There's another 77. Um, I mean, what more can be said about Suspiria? In case you want to hear more about it, check out my hour plus video here on my whole entire thoughts and deep dives into Suspiria. I don't think there's even a way to make the video appear right there. Who knows? I'm not going to go through that effort anyway. But although I prefer Opera, Deep Red, and Tenebrae to Suspiria, Inferno even, like, ties it. If not, I might enjoy it a little more. I do think that this and Deep Red are his best films, and this is just an absolute masterpiece. Like, nothing, no faults with this film, and pretty much with the rest of these movies. Like, no faults at all, no negatives. But just the score by Goblin alone is one of the most iconic and greatest soundtracks to a movie. Like, what an amazing score. Like, very Halloween-esque. And Halloween came a year after this. I'm pretty sure I've heard Carpenter say he was inspired by Goblin, their score from this movie. But absolute masterpiece, absolute classic of Italian horror. And I feel like for those who are trying to get into Italian horror, I feel like Suspiria is the best, or one of the best, entry points. Like, I definitely think this is an Italian horror movie I recommend to people who are trying to get into it. This is the first movie I usually recommend. Is Argento Suspiria. Then maybe like Zombie by Fulci, but like usually it's Suspiria, and it's because of how fucking beautiful this movie is, how mesmerizing it is with the color and the use of the lighting and everything is brilliant in this, and that's why it is number 12 on JT's top 20 horror films of the 1970s. We'll be right back, guys. We're back, guys. Number 11, and this is a movie I will be covering in the next few days because I just did the first movie I've covered by this director on the channel the other day, and I couldn't believe that it was that long until I actually did a David Cronenberg movie. But this movie is number 11, David Cronenberg's The Brood from '79. I love The Brood. I think this is an absolute masterpiece, and I think that this is Cronenberg's best movie that I've seen. I went over in Scanners my history with Cronenberg and how I feel about him and everything in that. So check out the video on Scanners. But I don't even know what to say to not ruin this. Basically, father is basically ends up trying to protect him and his wife's daughter from this place that the wife is being treated with this experimental psychiatry. That's pretty much all I can really say, and even that kind of I fucked up. But just check it out. Like, just go into it. If you're a Cronenberg fan, you've probably seen this. If you're a casual Cronenberg fan, you might have not seen this because it's definitely an underrated and less talked about Cronenberg film compared to The Fly and Scanners and um, even Naked Lunch. I talked about more than this movie. So definitely check out The Brood. It is on HBO Max. Suspiria, I forgot if I said, is on Tubi, and Bay of Blood is, I'm not sure if it's streaming anywhere. So number 11, 1979, The Brood by David Cronenberg. All right, we are in the top 10 approaching now. Are you guys ready? I'm fucking psyched. Let's go. This is the top 10 greatest horror films of the 1970s for JT. Number 10 is 1976, The Omen. This is such a fantastic movie, and I feel like this movie doesn't get the fucking props it deserves. Like, this movie does not get brought up when people talk about horror masterpieces. Like, you hear The Exorcist, you hear The Shining, you hear Halloween, you hear The Thing, you hear, all these classic movies, American Werewolf in London. But where the fuck is The Omen? Like, you never hear The Omen brought up really, and that's a crime because this movie is a masterpiece, and this movie is fantastic. Gregory Peck is so good in this. The kid who plays Damien, I forgot his name, the kid's name, but what a performance. Like, this kid really is creepy looking in this movie. And I don't know anyone really who hasn't seen this movie. But if you haven't seen The Omen, the Gregory Peck plays, what is he, the ambassador of the UK or something like that? Something, he's high up in the political ring. And him and his wife have a kid who might or might not be the Antichrist. Absolute classic. What a phenomenal film. Go watch it now if you haven't seen it. If you have seen it, go watch it now. Show some support to this goddamn movie because I really don't hear about it talked about often. But number 10, The Omen from 1976. Love it. Now this movie, number 9, is something I don't think ever happened for me. This movie I just saw a week ago, or not even. Yeah, about a week ago, 6 days ago, something like that. And it's already cracked my top 10 of the '70s. And this movie I only heard of from a friend of mine, and it is 1977. Again with the 77, The Haunting of Julia, aka what is it? Full Circle in the UK. Never heard of this movie. I've heard of it, but I've never seen it. I never knew anything about what it's about. And that's how I went into it, just completely blind. And this movie is fucking great. Like, fantastic. I can't believe I slept on this movie for so long and never saw this. Absolutely blew me away, and it is absolutely terrifying, this movie. Really amazing first watch for a film for me. And I'm trying to think of, you know what? I went in blind, going completely blind. That's the best way if you haven't seen this. I don't know if it's streaming anywhere. I couldn't find it, so I ended up downloading it. But watch The Haunting of Julia. You will not be disappointed. So, number 9, The Haunting of Julia from 1977, the magic year. Number 8 is Don Coscarelli's Phantasm from 79. Now, I love the whole Phantasm series. Most of you know this. I don't love the last one, Ravager, the 5th movie, but it's unfortunate that that's how they had to end it. But besides that, I love the first 4. But the original is an absolute masterpiece, absolute classic. And it is so dreamlike. This whole series is so surreal, so nightmarish. It feels like a fever dream, and I love every second of it. I love the Tall Man. What an underrated, horror villain. You don't hear him brought up much. Angus Scrimm is the Tall Man, and what a performance that he always gave. Excellent. I love Mike. I love Jodie. I love Red Two Bannister. What else do you need? Like, Phantasm is one of my desert island like series, to bring all the 5 movies with me. And you know what? After 50 years or so on a desert island, I'm sure after watching it so many times, I'll love Ravager too. Probably not. But number 8, Phantasm, amazing. And it is streaming pretty much everywhere. Tubi, Peacock, every free streaming service pretty much has all 4 of them, excluding number 2. It does not have number 2 for some reason. I'm pretty sure it's a rights thing since a different actor plays Mike. But 1, 3, 4, 5 are all on most free streaming services. Lucky number 7 is Lucio Fulci's Zombie, aka Zombie 2, aka Attack of the Zombie Flesh Eaters. Is that it? The other one? So many titles this movie had. But yeah, Zombie from 79. This movie is so iconic. Everyone knows this, even people who don't aren't into Italian horror. Like, Zombie is, like I said with Suspiria, is one of those films that I'll recommend to somebody if they're trying to get into Italian stuff. But one of the best zombie movies. I think I ranked it number 4 or something on my top zombie films. And just, Fulci's just a master of gore. The gore in this is so good. I love how the zombies look. And what other movie are you going to get a zombie fighting a shark underwater? No other movie. Absolute classic. So, number 7, Zombie by Lucio Fulci. Number 6, 666, is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 74. Does anyone ever notice, and I'm sure people have, but I mean, it's weird that the first movie is spelt Texas Chain Space New Word Saw Massacre. And then ever since then, it's been spelled Chainsaw in one word. I wonder why. And then even some posters from 77 spell it as one word, chainsaw. Side note, always notice that. Said, wonder why they stuck with that original title, but then everywhere else changed it, and then the rest of the series is one word. I don't know, but absolute classic gem of a horror movie. Everybody knows the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Group of kids go on a road trip, then they end up in this town and end up getting murdered and eaten by the cannibalistic family called the Sawyers and their chainsaw wielding family member Leatherface. Absolute classic. Love this movie. I just did a long deep dive on it a few weeks ago, and as well as Texas Chainsaw 2. I gotta finish that series eventually, but unfortunately, I don't care for many others in that franchise. But not much I need to say on this. It's on Tubi. Go watch it if you haven't seen it. For some odd reason, you're on a horror channel and you've never seen the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Number 5, Golden Rings. It's not fucking Christmas. Is David Lynch's Eraserhead from The Magic 1977. God, I love this movie. God, I love David Lynch. One of my favorite directors of all time. This movie, I think, might be the best debut by a director ever. I said this in my video for this, and I have to cover more Lynch soon because it's really driving me nuts that I haven't done any other videos on Lynch on this channel besides Eraserhead, and still to this day that was the hardest video I've done. Like having to fucking dissect and talk about Eraserhead at 3 in the morning. Yeah, that shit was hard, but plot. Like with most Lynch, this is just complete surrealism. This is all dreamlike and nightmare fuel. He wrote this out of his fear of becoming a father, and the only plot I can really give is Henry Spencer. This guy gets this girl pregnant, his girlfriend, and they give birth to a mutated baby. That is, I mean, very fucking mutated. And I mean, I know they used to show this as like a creature feature on like late night, like midnight monster movies and stuff back in the day. And this movie was so influential that Stanley Kubrick actually had the whole cast and crew of The Shining watch David Lynch's Eraserhead for inspiration. Like that's a fucking that's an achievement right there, and something to be proud of. But absolute masterpiece, David Lynch, number 5 with Eraserhead. Number 4, we're getting to the top 3, but first we got to go through 4. Dario Argento's Deep Red. This is for me probably the greatest giallo ever made. This, and I'd say maybe Blood and Black Lace are the two. But god damn, man, this movie is absolutely fantastic. Everything in this movie is fantastic. This is another masterpiece. This is another movie that made my masterpiece perfect film playlist that I'll link at the end here. That just have a spoiler discussion, deep dives on all the movies that I consider perfect or masterpieces or classics, and this is absolute one of them. I love the whole chemistry between Marcus and I always forget the character's name, Daria Nicolodi's character, but they're the actor and actress's chemistry and the character chemistry are both fantastic in this movie. I love how, well, I can't really say this without spoiling it, but I love how Argento handles the mystery of the whodunit here and gives a clue fairly early on that most people never notice the first way around. I never did. It's genius, but the gore is fantastic in this. The kills are great. They're brutal, and just the soundtrack by Goblin again is absolutely iconic. Most people know it, even if they've never seen the movie. It's just a popular score, and for damn good reason. So number 4 is Dario Argento's last appearance here on the list with Deep Red from '75. Number 3, we're in the top 3 of JT's greatest 20 horror films, or 20 greatest, fuck you, horror films of the '70s. Number 3 for me, I just covered this movie Mario Bava's Lisa and the Devil from 1974. This movie is a complete masterpiece for me. It is my favorite Mario Bava film, tied pretty much with Kill Baby Kill. Like those two are tied together. And but that was 66, not in the 70s. But God, I love this movie. This is another movie with just a lot of surreal stuff going on and a lot of just a very dreamlike feel to it. Like I just love movies like that. I guess those dreamy, trippy, just weird movies, and this is one of them. But this is definitely, like I said in my video, that this is definitely Mario Bava's most out there movie, in my opinion, and it's just brilliant. This woman, Lisa, ends up getting lost, separated from her friend while on vacation, taking a trip to Italy, and after seeing a mural in the square of the town of this person who's supposed to be the devil, she ends up meeting a guy who looks just like the person in the painting, and she ends up getting a ride from a couple and their driver, and they break down in front of a house, and the guy who looks like the devil is the butler there, and they end up having dinner and staying there, and bad stuff happens. Such a great movie, very ambiguous with a few things plot wise that you definitely will want to watch again and read and think about it and what exactly happened here and what does this mean. But God, man, I love this movie so much. If you haven't seen Lisa and the Devil, I don't know where it's streaming. I don't think it's streaming anywhere. I rented it, but fan fucking tastic. At number three, Mario Bava's Lisa and the Devil. Now, number two and number one should be obvious for most people who know me, but number two is William Peter Blatty's The Exorcist, William Friedkin from 73. What more can you say about it? In fact, if you know what more I can say about it, why don't you check out my video for The Exorcist? Spoiler discussion deep dive, hour plus video going into the film. Again, I don't know. I'm not going to be able to do that. Whatever. But God, this is an absolute just horror titan of a movie. Like, I don't know anyone who doesn't love this movie who has seen it. I do know people who love Exorcist 3 more than Exorcist. And I mean, damn, it's close for me too. I love Exorcist 3. But this is the best demonic possession film still to this day for me. And I always say the demonic makeup in this movie on Reagan, still to this day, despite all the technological advances we've had in practical effects, in makeup, in CGI, everything, no demon possessed person has ever looked as creepy and as fucking real. This movie looks real, man, at times. Like, real as if demonic possession was a thing. But God, it looks just too good, man. And there hasn't been a movie since that's topped it for me. Like in the demonic makeup department and in the demonic possession film department. So I'm not giving a fucking plot for The Exorcist. Like, are you serious? It's streaming somewhere. I know I saw it browsing recently. I don't remember where. So either Prime, Shudder, Tubi are your best bets. So number two, The Exorcist. And number one should be fucking obvious. It is John Carpenter's Halloween from 78. It is the first horror movie I ever saw when I was 6 years old. I finally figured out it was six because I always had 5 to 6 because I wasn't sure. But when I turned 6, Halloween would have been right after that. So I was just turned 6 a month before. So I'm born in September. So 6 years old, first horror movie I ever saw, and it's still to this day just absolute perfection in every way. I don't think there's anybody here that doesn't know Halloween. I'm not giving a plot synopsis. I'm not even saying where it is. Fucking find it. You should own it. It's Halloween. just in my top three films of all time. And just the fact that Carpenter has two films of his that are in my top three films of all time, one being my favorite film of all time, not just even horror, just film in general, is unbelievable that this guy has two films in my top three. But Halloween, number one of the 70s for me. So let's go over the top 20 list real quick. Number 20, Dario Argento's Cat o' Nine Tails. 19, The Wicker Man. Number 18, Jaws. Number 17, Black Christmas. Number 16, Alien. Number 15, Dawn of the Dead. Number 14, Tourist Trap. Number 13, Mario Bava's Twitch of the Death Nerve. Number 12, Dario Argento's Suspiria. Number 11, The Brood by David Cronenberg. Number 10, The Omen. Number 9, The Haunting of Julia, or Full Circle for the UK guys. Phantasm at number 8. Zombie by Lucio Fulci at number 7. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Tobe Hooper at number 6. Eraserhead by David Lynch at number 5. Deep Red by Argento at number 4. Lisa and the Devil by Mario Bava at number 3. The Exorcist at number 2. And Carpenter's Halloween at number 1. Those are my 20 best and favorite horror films of the 1970s. So, guys, if you have favorites, leave me your list. Leave me a top 10 list, top 5 list, whatever. Love to hear all you guys' favorite 70s films, because you don't hear 70s horror talked about and praised as much as 80s by a long shot. Like you always hear 80s, which rightfully so. It's the best decade for horror. I mean, it's my favorite, but the 70s is no slouch. Like it is right there with the 80s, and it is more influential. Like it came first, but like doing these lists. Always fun doing these. So I might do another one tomorrow, later, way later in the day. It's 1 a.m. But all right, guys. Hope you're having a good day or afternoon or night wherever you're from, and I will talk to you soon. Take care, people.